Welcome into College Football Every Game on the Board podcast, wherever you're downloading your podcast app. Remember, Sports Memo podcast, also simulcast on the WagerTalk YouTube channel. We got Robbie Veno, first guest up. Follow him on Twitter at Rob Veno Sports. Robbie, welcome in. How you feeling?
I am great, Drew. Another one of our favorite times of the week, the Every Game on the Board podcast. We'll take care of the upper portion here and then turn it over to the rest of the analysts.
Yeah, absolutely, Robbie. We got Wednesday night, Thursday night, doubleheader on Friday night, all in college football. We're talking them on this segment, and we're going down to 127, 128, Kansas versus West Virginia. Then we'll bring in the next set of guests for Liberty, Syracuse down the line here. But, Robbie, starting off Wednesday college football action in the Sun Belt. We got Coastal Carolina at Louisiana, Lafayette. We got the Raging Cajuns now up to -9 at home, 58.5 being the total.
Yeah, you know, my power ratings indicated that opening number might be a little bit short, Drew. I think I had UL Lafayette -10. And, you know, Coastal Carolina is getting a lot of, publicity now, rightfully so. They've done some good things this season, no doubt about it. But I don't know that they're as physical as UL Lafayette will be. And remember, the Raging Cajuns have gone through some coronavirus stuff where they were shorthanded in a couple of games. I just think back to the fact that they defeated Iowa State in Ames. And if you can go up there from what we've seen of Iowa State ever since then this is probably still the class of this conference, UL Lafayette, or at least with Appalachian State, the class of this conference. I don't know that Coastal Carolina has made the firm step up yet. The running attack here, to me, is what will make a huge difference for Louisiana Lafayette, Drew, because they can soften you up with Regis and company running the football, Mitchell. And then we've seen Levi Lewis be pretty good downfield. They take their shots. So for me, I think at the line of scrimmage, as good as Coastal's been, I think Lafayette is better. Everything that Coastal has done well this year, I think that Lafayette is better at. The big win over Arkansas State, it's worth something, but I don't think it's worth playing Coastal Carolina here. I totally agree with the line movement, although at this point in time, you should have got it earlier. Because, as I say, I think my power ratings indicated 10. It's really getting close to that ceiling of what you can lay, Drew. So for people like you who I saw on Twitter and got that good number, I think you're on the right side.
Yeah, it was fun. I mean, I think Billy Napier, after hearing him talk about Robbie, they're as healthy as they've been since week one, all season, where they went in to Ames and came out not only covering, but winning that game. I think that speaks a lot to how good this team is, top to bottom roster wise. Look at the recruiting rankings. Louisiana Lafayette, obviously in the state of Louisiana, and depending on what year, per capita, the best recruiting state in the country. Keep in mind their population is lower, so per capita wise, and the fact Levi Lewis, like you talked about, quarterback, he's a lefty, runs around, he's good. Not to take anything away from the Chanticleer's quarterback, he's gotten off to a great start, but just talent wise around him, I think there's a pretty large gap here. So I did lay it with the Raging Cajuns. Robbie, we got Thursday night football action also in the Sun Belt here. Georgia State at Arkansas State. We're seeing Arkansas State -3 in the hook at home, 72 being the total, Robbie.
Yeah, we talked a little bit about this one yesterday. In fact, we talked more than a little bit. We went in depth on this game yesterday on the Best Damn College Football Show with our colleague Ralph Michaels. I'll repeat a couple of things that I said yesterday that I think are interesting in this game. From a situational standpoint, Drew, I just don't know if all of this stop and start playing games will have an effect on Georgia State. They played so well, you feel like they would want to keep going and get some fluid results in there, but they play a good game and then they get stopped, and they play a good game and then they get stopped. Arkansas State, however, is in their third game in 13 days, which is a lot. It's kind of the contrast to that, right? Georgia State is playing and stopping, and Arkansas State is just playing like crazy at this point in time. I think Ralph brought up a great number where Thursday nights are concerned. Arkansas State 8-2 on Thursday nights under the with head coach Blake Now
Blake Anderson, yeah.
Blake Anderson, right. 8-2 under during his tenure against the spread. So that's a strong number. I like their passing attack. I just don't think that Georgia State has faced anything like that yet. But on the other side, Drew, I will say Georgia State's offensive line has been very impressive. Cornelius Brown has done a good job running that offense. They're very diverse and balanced. So this is going to be a handful for Arkansas State, a team that hasn't really proven to be able to stop anybody yet. You might get involved in a shootout here. I know that's both where Ralph and I went yesterday with this game. Totals really high, 71.5, 72. But, when you start digging into the weeds in this one, it's hard to see which one of these opponents will stop the other.
Robbie, we got Friday night lights here. SMU at Tulane, AAC action here. 107-108, the rotation number, guys. And it's a doubleheader on Friday night, 6 p.m. Eastern kick in this one. SMU laying 6 in the hook on the road, 64.5 being the total in the Big Easy, Robbie.
Yeah, and this is a shame for SMU, right? When we last saw them, they were losing their star wide receiver, Reggie Roberson, for the season. It's not the first time Roberson's been hurt. I mean, he had 243 yards receiving in the third quarter against Memphis when he got hurt. You could see the difference in SMU's offense when he left the game. They could no longer push the ball downfield vertically. They settled for a lot of underneath stuff. Now, they've had 2 weeks to get ready for this game. They didn't play last week, so certainly that's been a point of emphasis in practice, and we know Sonny Dykes can coach air raid offense, so it's going to be a next man up situation, but the next man up is not Reggie Roberson, so I think there's a little decline there. And in that same game, Drew, they lost their number one running back in that contest. Now, you lose 2 guys of that caliber in the same game, and it showed up for SMU. They were off to a real good start, and their offense went stagnant. But I will say this. The replacement for T.J. McDaniel at running back was Ulysses Bentley, and he played pretty well. I don't think that the running back position will dip off too much. I do worry about the downfield passing here for SMU. I'm sure they'll come up with a solution. I don't want to sell Sonny Dykes and that team short. And if they do, Tulane got bombarded by Houston last week through the air. Tulane, a team that is about as sporadic a team as we find in college football right now. Play a great half, play a miserable half. Play a great game, play a miserable game. They're now working with a true freshman quarterback, Michael Pratt. He's the guy who started against Houston last week. I think it was Thursday night, so Tulane has an extra day of preparation here. They'll have 8 days to get ready for this one. But Michael Pratt goes 11 of 21 for $141, throws 1 TD, does not get picked. Rushing the football, which is important out of the quarterback position in Willie Fritz's offense, he rushes 13 times for 9 yards. They're a work in progress right now on offense. It's a regression here. I think they really counted on Keon Howard, the Southern Miss transfer, to run this offense. It didn't work out. Kind of starting from scratch here, Drew. I think SMU, we've seen some movement towards Tulane, 7 down to 6.5, and we've seen some real movement in the total, 68.5 down to 64.5. I believe that's due to the SMU injuries at the skill positions, and that's also due to a true freshman who didn't look very good. Remember, Tulane scored 2 defensive touchdowns to start that Houston game within the first 5 minutes, and they held a 24-7 lead. It wasn't really the offense that got them going. I don't think the offense gets going here. I'd probably still lean SMU minus the 6.5. I think they'll find a way to create the explosion that they lose with, or at least a portion of the way to create the explosion that they lose with Roberson.
Robbie, we got the doubleheader on Friday night with the nightcap, 9:30 Eastern, 6:30 Pacific kick here, 109-110, the rotation number. BYU at Houston, this one on ESPN with BYU laying 5 at Houston, 62.5 being the total, Robbie.
Yeah, again, a game that we talked about in depth with Ralph on yesterday's show. So for those of you watching, if you want a little more analysis on this game, including Ralph, you can go back to the link for the Best Damn College Football Show and find it on YouTube and go ahead and check it out. But I'll tell you what my thoughts were on this game. It's a fantastic contrast in style, speed versus power, no question about it. Houston's speed is likely to give BYU fits. The BYU offensive line, which was actually short two starters last week has been tremendous, Drew, at keeping their quarterback, Zach Wilson, upright, at leading the way, paving the way for that punishing ground game. I think Houston has got their hands full. All they saw was Tulane last week, and Tulane really didn't affect Houston at all. Didn't seem to be as physical as they have been in the past. So BYU should move the ball relatively easy here. Zach Wilson's the better quarterback of the two as far as pro prospect is concerned, but Clayton Tune in this offense is fantastic. I think that it's very difficult for either defense to make a stop here or numerous stops here. For that reason, I would play over the total. Weather seems to be good, Drew. We're not going to talk about bad weather anywhere this week. So that's not going to be of any consequence whatsoever. BYU has scored 45 or more points in 3 of their 4 games so far. And yet somehow they failed to go over very much. They've been 1-3 as far as over is concerned. I think that changes here. I think they get theirs. Houston certainly will get theirs. And we're looking at 62.5. That's pretty doable. If they're tied at 31 all, 34-31 gets you paid. Pretty sure that happens.
He's Robbie Veno on Twitter at Rob Veno Sports. Find him at WagerTalk.com. Guys, he's the number 1 handicapper at WagerTalk in terms of profit made. So overall, he's the number 1 on the list. If you're going to check out a handicapper, might be none better at WagerTalk than Robbie Veno. Up over 200%, right, Robbie, on the year?
It is, Drew, over 200%. Yep.
Wow. And anything you can attribute to this year of why that's happening?
Well, I think I've had a couple of really good seasons in certain sports. The NBA was tremendous to me, obviously. Major League Baseball has really come around, and the NFL has been off to a great start. So it's really been universal as far as the sports themselves go. But the NBA was really kind to me this season. So we've built a huge profit right now, return on investment, and considering the volume, Drew, because I'm not a low volume guy, it's a pretty sturdy record, and it's stayed this way for quite a while. We really haven't dipped.
Yeah, no, good stuff overall, guys. So check them out, wagertalk.com, up over 200% ROI on the season. Guys, we got Saturday's cards starting off now, 12 o'clock Eastern kicks, 9 a.m. Pacific, 113, 114, the rotation number. ACC action, Robbie. Pittsburgh at Miami, 48 being the total, with the Canes laying 10.5 in Hard Rock.
Yeah, and this is a tough handicap, Drew, because you just wonder what effect that Clemson demolition has on Miami this week. That game so hyped, and Miami themselves were so hyped. They thought they had maybe closed the gap between them and Clemson, and they didn't close the gap between themselves and Clemson. Some of the numbers from that game: Clemson wins the first downs, 34-9. Clemson wins total yards, 550 to 210. Miami only records 1 offensive TD in that game. Miami allows 5 sacks of a very mobile quarterback in De'Aaron King. So that might be a crushing blow to come back from 1 week later. This will really be on Manny Diaz and his coaching staff's shoulders to get this team ready for Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh on the other side lose a heartbreaker to Boston College last week. You know, the number here, Drew, just lends itself to taking the dog. If you look at Pittsburgh in their 4 ACC games, those games have been decided by 1, 1, 3, and 11. So Pittsburgh finds themselves in close games all the time. To be an underdog of this price with the pass rush that they have, Kenny Pickett does have the ability to get them points. I would think Pittsburgh is probably the right way. Again, I think in my mind, I'm counting on Miami to have a little bit of a letdown here because of that crushing loss last week.
Robbie, we got South Florida at Temple up next. Temple -10 in the hook at home, 54.5 being the total.
You know what? And I'm going to backtrack here real quick, Drew, to Boston College, Virginia Tech, 111, 112. I think my notes are in that order. So let me just run that game real quick here. BC And Vatek, for Boston College, Drew, they could not run the football again last week. They go 35 carries for 92 yards, very un-Boston College, like 2.6 a carry. And those are true rushing yards. I took the sack yardage out, so they couldn't run the football whatsoever. But they couldn't pass protect either. They allowed 6 sacks for minus 62 yards, and yet they won this game. They threw downfield, which, of course, we know about the system change here. It's more of a pro-style offense now with vertical passing downfield, passes to the backs. But we saw, despite the fact that it's not a high completion percentage, we see real strong volume per pass attempt, per pass completion out of Notre Dame transfer QB Phil Jurkovec. And his new favorite target evolved last week, and it's Zay Flowers. They connect 3 times, 4 touchdowns outside of the red zone. So big play ability from Boston College got them that victory. They connect on touchdown passes 44, 77, and 25 yards. You're going to play a Virginia Tech defense that gets absolutely torched last week by UNC. What else is new? And we know that Virginia Tech still has lingering coronavirus issues on that defensive side of the football and some injuries, but they give up 656 yards last week, almost 10 yards per play to UNC. The good news for them, their offense is dynamite. And when Hendon Hooker came in the second half, looked like he didn't miss a beat from last year. So to me, Boston College is a team that's only 1-3 over under this year. Last week was their first over of the season. But until something changes with Virginia Tech, outstanding offensively, absolutely miserable defensively, I think you have to play Vatek games up and over the number.
Robbie, that's why I love you, man. You got my back. I missed one. I would have heard about that in the comments, and it would have been okay, guys. So thank you for hitting that one. I did miss it, guys, off the top. But getting back into rotation order here, we got 117, 118, Navy at ECU. Robbie, talk about contrasting styles here, man. We got 58 being the total with ECU, the Pirates, laying 1 at home.
Okay. You and I have been working together for a lot of years now, and I've totally thrown you off. We're going to do Navy East Carolina now, and we'll go back because I screwed you up by skipping South Florida Temple. But Navy ECU, let's get there first because ECU came up with a huge win last week against USF. And that word huge, I'm probably using that way too loosely, Drew, because South Florida, I gave them every shot in the world to cover 5.5 last week, and they were never in that game. From start to finish, they were destroyed. So I think we know, once again, if I go back to last week's show that you and I did, we talked about head coach Jeff Scott saying that personnel absences are just something they're going to have to deal with all season long. And it's a team with new schemes. It's a team that really hasn't had full personnel on the field, whether practice or playing field, game day field, whatsoever this year, and it's showing up. It probably shows up again here now I'm back to talking about USF. Now we're all messed up. But where USF is concerned, it's going to be a problem spot for them. Where East Carolina is concerned, they took advantage. They didn't turn the ball over. Remember, we had said how they couldn't move the ball against Georgia State, less than 300 yards, only 1 offensive touchdown. But last week, that all changed. They came back. They didn't make the dumb mistakes. I think, Drew, that you have to try and weigh whether or not East Carolina's victory in convincing fashion is just against a poor bottom-of-the-barrel FBS team, or if it's a turning of the corner. The money would indicate to you that people think East Carolina has turned a corner. I'm not so sure they can defend Navy. Navy's been hit or miss all season long, but I'll say this. Navy's 2-0 inside the AAC. Their 2 wins have come in conference, and as we've noted numerous times on our other show, conference play counts. And so this will be a big game for Navy. I don't know that I agree with this line move. I would rather have Navy, and I'll just wrap up the other one real quick, Temple, South Florida, so we can move on. I would not be playing USF right now under any circumstances. I think Temple played a pretty good game last week for their first time out of the chute. Remember, that was their season opener. They'll expand on that. I think Temple's probably the right side there.
All right, Robbie. So are we all caught up? Now we can go to
We are.
Auburn,
Duke?
Auburn, South Carolina.
I have 119 Duke NC State. Are we wrong?
I'm no. We got Duke NC State. Yeah, I was just testing you there, Robbie. We got Duke NC State in the ACC. NC State -4.5, -5 at home, 59.5 or 60 being the total, Robbie.
All right, I'm going to go real quick here, guys, because we are on a hard out here this afternoon. So in this game, Drew, Duke ran 102 plays last week against Syracuse, 102 to 52. They had a plus 50 play advantage. David Cutcliffe, remember we read his quote last week on the show, we're very close to winning. Well, he got his win. They've sped things up. They're going to play an NC State team that has sped things up with their quarterback, Devin Leary. NC State looked real good last week. You're looking at a total here that's gone down, has gone down from 62 to 59.5. I have no idea why that number would go down in this case because of the way these two offenses play. The tempo creates more possessions. Neither defense is any good at this point in time. NC State's run defense has played all right, but overall defense not that good. I think that game, again, looking at the total here, I think that game easily could get to 60 points, and right now we're staring at 59.5.
All right, Robbie, we got Virginia at Wake Forest up next. 61 the total with the Hoos laying 2.5 at Wake Forest.
Yeah, Wake Forest we haven't seen for a while, Drew, for a long while, since they were supposed to play Notre Dame. But they're pretty constant. You can handicap them very easily. It's a up-tempo offense that's going to score points. It's a defense that's a sieve. That being known, we look at UVA, who lost their starting quarterback, Brennan Armstrong, last week. In comes Drew. I don't know if you saw this, but I'm watching that game because I had to play on the over. And they bring in their backup quarterback. His jersey number is 36. I thought it was like a middle linebacker playing quarterback, but Lindell Scott comes in the second quarter and throws the football 64 times in that game. And Virginia tried to rally. They just couldn't. The passing game was kind of limited to short to intermediate stuff, but he completed a lot here, and he'll probably complete a lot against Wake Forest. Virginia, as we mentioned last week, again, the tempo with this team, 80-plus plays, 80-plus plays, 80-plus plays all the time now. Neither one of these teams are going to go slow. It seems to be a common theme here among the games that we're going over. But this total has come down based on the fact that Armstrong's not going to play, and I don't know that it makes a difference against Wake Forest defense. I saw enough out of Scott as a backup quarterback last week to think that Virginia's going to score. One more time, I would probably advise people toward the over in that game.
We got 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 4 up next. 9 a.m. Pacific kick here. Auburn at South Carolina. We got the Fighting Gus Malzahn's laying 3 in Columbia, South Carolina. 51.5 being the total, Robbie.
Boy, they got one last week, Drew, that they needed. I mean, a field goal at the very end of the game for Auburn. Arkansas has come a long way very quickly under Sam Pittman. For Auburn, my gut instinct is to play them based on their defensive ability, but it seems to have gone a little bit backwards for them. I just don't know what to do with Auburn at this point in time. South Carolina has surprised me a little bit. Overall, offense and defense, I didn't think they would be as competitive as they are. Colin Hill, every week that goes by, he gets his teammates more used to the new offense of Mike Bobo. This is an interesting game. It's a short number, though, very, very short number, and I'm inclined to look at Auburn. Haven't really made up my mind yet. Boy, if I could count on the defense, and maybe I can, then I would lean towards Auburn's side. That offensive line and the fact that Bo Nix just can't get untracked is bothersome, though.
Yeah, I like the Gamecocks here, Robbie. I don't know. I don't think the Auburn offense is looking all that hot this year, but we'll see what happens. South Carolina catching 3 at home in that one. We got UNC at FSU up next. North Carolina laying 13.5, 64 the total in Tallahassee.
Yeah, and talk about not looking so hot. The Florida State defense is an absolute mess. Notre Dame destroyed that team last week. For Florida State, Drew, again, I'm going back to last week because a lot of what these coaches said came true in these games last week, and you got to buy into it now because for Florida State, they had been making a ton of defensive rotations, just trying guys to see if something would stick. And the coaching staff had said it's because nobody will take any leadership on that defense. And we saw no leadership last week against Notre Dame. It's pure athletic ability. They're not really outmanned. But boy, as a team, they were outmanned last week. The sophomore quarterback, Jordan Travis, looked pretty good. I think that's a step in the right direction. Florida State can score points here, but they're not going to stop UNC. I thought UNC would get on track last week. They did. Sam Howell and company already talked about how many yards they gained, almost 10 per play against Virginia Tech. This ACC, Drew, is starting to look like, the Pac-12 after dark with all these teams that can score and not many that can defend. Don't think I want Florida State under any circumstance right now. They're having too much trouble figuring out the defensive end. They can score points, but they're not going to stop UNC from scoring. UNC ran for well over 300 yards last week.
Robbie, we got one game left in this section. Guys, check out Robbie Veno's work. All of his 3-day, 7-day, 30-day packages available at WagerTalk.com. He is the number one handicapper at WagerTalk.com in terms of profit produced going all the way back to January 1st. So not cherry picking numbers other than the start of the season, at the start of the year, on January 1st, 2020. So check him out, Robbie Veno, number one handicapper at WagerTalk. We got last game here for this section, Robbie, then we'll turn it over. Kansas at West Virginia, 127-128, the rotation number, 9 a.m. Pacific kick here with West Virginia laying 22.5 at home, 51.5 being the total, Robbie.
Well, both teams had a week off, so they were able to have an extra week to prepare for each other. I have to laugh at the comment that Les Miles made before their last game against Oklahoma State, where he said, we're very close to being a good offense. We're going to be a good offense. We're going to score a lot of points. And then they go out and lay another egg. Now, Oklahoma State's a good defensive team, but so is West Virginia. And, it's a complete mismatch fundamentally, Drew. The West Virginia defense against the Kansas offense. I don't know what Kansas can find in 2 weeks that will make them or allow them to move the football against this defense. I have a lot of faith in offensive coordinator Brent Dearman, but they just don't have the personnel right now. And until Les Miles gets a couple of more recruiting classes under his belt, they're shorthanded. And for West Virginia, they'll probably enjoy the step down in class playing Kansas's defense here. They should be able to, with Jarrett Dagey at quarterback, move the ball through the air. It's something that's troubled them so far this season in most instances. But I think this week is a good week for them to go out and light up the scoreboard. Kansas, boy, oh boy, we've talked about some really good teams during this segment and some really miserable teams. Kansas is one of those miserable teams. Just can't get near them right now.
Robbie, I kind of like the Mountaineers to cover the 22. We got Johnny in the chat box saying that. I don't usually like laying big numbers and lost actually doing that with Notre Dame last week against Florida State. The new quarterback did play better for the Seminoles, by the way. But, Johnny, I'm kind of looking towards West Virginia minus the 22, and it sounds like you are too, Robbie.
I would. They're under no circumstances could you play Kansas right now.
All right, Robbie Veno, check him out, WagerTalk.com. Robbie, anything you want to throw out there before we shut this down?
You know what? Good luck to everybody out there. We will say real quick, for those who don't know, we had an LSU Florida cancellation. That game won't be played. And keep an eye on the Ole Miss game. Ole Miss is going to go through one more round of COVID testing if they can pass it. Lane Kiffin says if they had to play today, they could, but we'll see what the results bring. So let's keep our fingers crossed that Ole Miss stays on the board this week.
All right, guys, every game on the board going all day long here at the Wager Talk YouTube channel. Also, wherever you're downloading your podcast, that's Sports Memo Podcast. We'll be right back with Teddy Covers breaking down NFL every game on